This is one of my favorite letters. The magnificent letter Mem. And as you remember, every Hebrew letter is a word. Every Hebrew letter is a picture. Every Hebrew letter's a number. I mean, how many of us could talk for 45 minutes on the letter O? There's nothing really exciting about the English language. But let's take a look at that magnificent letter Mem. It is truly one of my favorite letters. In the ancient Hebrew, when Moses was writing that letter, as you know, if you look at your computer, there's different fonts. Well, Hebrews over the ages has gone through different fonts. Does anyone know what the letter Mem stands for? Water. And you can almost see on the one on the right how it looks like the letter M in our letter. This is where we got it from. But it was crashing waves of water. So think of, when you hear Mem, think of water, but think of crashing waves of water, more like a tsunami that's coming, causing chaos, all right? That is the letter Mem. Now, the letter Mem is the 13th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Its numerical value is 40. The first 10 letters are the first 10 numbers, and then after 10, it goes 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 200, 300, 400. That's how it works. And this is the 13th letter, so it has a numerical value of 40. Now, here's what's interesting. This Mem can take on a different shape. It can also look like that, where it's closed. If you notice, it's open at the bottom, and then it's closed at the top. And if we do it with our M, if you'll notice the word mom, there's a capital M and a small m. Now, we typically capitalize the letters when it's the first word of a sentence. There are 5 Hebrew letters that can take different shapes, but it's when it's at the end of a word rather than the beginning of a word. And so if it's at the beginning or anywhere else in the word, it looks like this. But if it's ever at the end of a word, it looks like that, okay? And what's interesting, if you take the letter Yud and stick it in the middle, you get the word for water. So think about this. You've got a Mem and a Mem, which means water, and then you have a hand that's sticking it right, because the Yud means hand, Yod is hand. And so you have the word water. So here we go. We got the flood. Woo! But Mem is water. Now, so the letter Mem is a shortened word of Mayim, which means water. With that said, let's look at Genesis chapter 1. We're going to look at verse 1, verse 6, and verse 7. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So God made the firmament. He divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. Okay, let's take a look here. Here's Genesis 1:1. And what I have in the top line on the first square there, you can read that, Bereshit bara Elohim et, and then it is Hashemayim is the word for heaven. That is the word Hashemayim. What do you see at the end of that word but the word Mayim, which means water? So the very word heaven is holding water in it. And then it says in verse 6, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. And the waters, the word the waters is on the number 6, the far right, Hamayim. Ha is the, Mayim is water. So he says, let there be a firmament between the waters in the midst of heaven. And let it divide the water from the waters. That's what it says. So you can see the Mayim on number 6, you have the far left one, and you have to the right, Mayim, the waters, the Lamed is from, and then you have waters. So does everyone see that? Okay, let it divide the waters from the waters. Now in verse 7, God made the firmament and divided the waters, and there you see the waters, okay, Hamayim, and then it says, which were under the firmament from the waters, and again, Hamayim, ha is they combined words. Well, you know what's fascinating about that? His hand divided the waters from the waters, and the very word mayim, you have his hand dividing the waters from the waters. I mean, that is just incredible to me. Now they say the waters that are up in heaven are closed, but the waters on earth, where it's opened, is where the waters flow. Now, here's something that's interesting about this. They say the language that is the closest to the Hebrew language is the scientific language. For example, H2O. If you want to define water at its most basic level, it's H2O. Well, what do we know? In Hebrew, every letter is a word, every letter is a number. And so we can think of the two mems as the two hydrogen and the yud as the oxygen in between. Now, the waters on earth are represented, as I said, by the open mem as they're accessible to us, and the waters above are represented by the closed mem as they are only accessible to God, and he's the one that says has the key to the rain. Now, the letter Yud represents the firmament, God's hand separating everything. Now, I think it's interesting in Deuteronomy chapter 29 and verse 29, it says, the secret things belong to the Lord our God, but those things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we can do all the words of the law. So the open mem represents those things that God reveals to us here on earth, and the closed mem are those things that he hides and keeps secret in heaven. Now, look at Isaiah 55, 10 through 11, as we look at the water cycle. And think of the water as the word of God, for heaven's sake. And out of your belly will flow rivers of living water. Messiah is the living water. And as he descended from heaven and came to earth, he's going to return back to heaven. And then he's going to come back down. It's the water cycle, the Torah cycle, the Messiah cycle. Look at, we know it says, I want to skip a verse. Go to Hosea 6:3. And then we're going to know, if we follow on to know the Lord, his going forth is prepared as the morning, and he's going to come to us like what? The rain. As the latter former rain on the earth. Now go back to Habakkuk 2:14. Let me see. I read Isaiah 55, didn't I? Did I read Isaiah 55? Okay, I'm getting old. Okay, Habakkuk 2:14. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of God as the waters cover the sea. I'm going to read Isaiah 55, 10, 11 because I like it so much. As the rain comes down and the snow from heaven and returns not, but waters the earth, it makes it bring forth and bud, that it may give seed to the sower, bread to the eater. Then he says, so shall my word be that goes forth out of my mouth. It won't return to me void, but it'll accomplish that which I please. And it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. All right, isn't that amazing? The whole water cycle is Messiah coming down from heaven, returning to earth, and then going back up. And he comes to us as the rain. Now here, what do we have here? Anyone know that word down at the bottom? Come on. What? Mikvah. Who said mikvah? Nobody said mikvah. Oh, Eileen, you said mikvah. Exactly. And who knows what a mikvah is? It's where you, quote unquote, baptize, but it's not baptize, it's where you immerse yourself. Okay, the whole concept of water, and that's why the word mikvah begins with the letter mem, and that's why it's water. This is what they would do every time they go to the temple. They would sanctify themselves by immersing themselves in a mikvah. Now, as I said, he is going to come to us as the rain, the former rain and the latter rain. And so it's referring to the Moedim, the feast of the Lord. At tabernacles, they're always praying for rain. So the winter rains will help. And then in the spring, you have the spring rains. And I'm going off topic here a little bit. I do that once in a while. Well, how many of you have ever heard me teach on the Song of Songs? Most of you have not heard me teach. How many has not heard me teach on the Song of Songs? The Song of Songs is nothing like what you think it is. Solomon is actually a type of Antichrist. And I know that's going to come as a shock to most people. And then the one who's talking to the bride is the Messiah. Solomon is the type of earthly king who screws it up all the time. The Messiah, he's their shepherd king who comforts their soul. And what happens? The Messiah, this is in chapter 1, chapter 2, he comes, and you all know this verse, where he says, "Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away, for lo, the winter is past, and the rain is over and gone." She didn't sleep one night, she went into hibernation. Winter's over, the rain. And the rain is how he comes. So here he is coming at the spring feasts. It's springtime. This is referring to Passover, all those spring feasts. And after he says this beautiful song, "Arise, my love, and come away," you know what she says? She says, "Why don't you go away on the mountains of Bether? You go do your thing. I'm going to enjoy the house. I'm just going to be in the four walls, and I'm just going to take advantage of everything." As a matter of fact, chapter 1 ends where he's looking in her eyes, and he says, "Oh, you have dove's eyes." Every woman wants the man to look in her eyes, see her inner beauty. And that's what he says to her, but what does she say? "Oh, wow, the beams are of cedar, the rafters are of fir, our bed is green." What is she looking at? She's looking at, "I scored." And then a couple chapters later, he comes back again. This is the fall festivals. And he says, "Get up." It's raining outside. But he's speaking of the blessings as she comes out and works the harvest. But what does she respond? She has the door locked. And when he says, "Come out," she goes, "I'll get my feet dirty. Do I got to put my clothes on, my coat on again?" But when you understand the whole song, it's the spring festivals, it's the fall festivals, it's his first coming, it's his second coming, and the bride's not ready. But then at the end of the book, she's now getting up early, she's working the harvest, telling him to come along and work with her. It's a total restoration. But that's what the book really is about, is the immaturity of the bride at the first to the fullness of the bride at the last. Because how many of you know the Bible talks about harvests? You don't harvest a harvest until it's mature. And God is waiting for the maturity of the bride that she grow up before he marries her. Anyway, back to the letter, ma'am. That was just a side note. Okay, this is why 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 7 and 8. He says, "We speak the wisdom of God in a mystery." That's referring to the closed mem, that which is hidden, which God has hidden, predetermining it before the world for our glory, which none of the rulers of this world knew. If they had known, they would have crucified the Lord of glory. Wow. What is this mystery he's referring to here? Well, let's look at Ephesians 3, 8, 9. "This grace is given to me, who am less than the least of all saints, to preach the gospel of the unsearchable riches of Christ among the nations, and to bring to light what is the fellowship of the mystery, which from eternity has been hidden in God, who created all things by Yeshua HaMashiach." Oh my gosh, that's what the gospel is supposed to do. It's to reveal something that's been hidden from eternity. And then look at Colossians 1:27. For to them God would make known what are the riches of his glory of this mystery among the nations, which is the Messiah is inside of you. The hope of glory. That's the mystery that the God, the creator of all things, wants to live in you. But he can only live in a clean house. Look at Luke 17, verse 21. Neither will they say, lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is where? It's in you. Let's look at Psalms. We're going to look at the Hebrew word for compassion. In Psalms 111:4, it says, he has made his wonderful works to be remembered. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion. Do you see a mem in there? This time at the very end of both of these words. Rachum is compassion, and Rachum is also the womb. The womb is the place of compassion. The mother loves her child that is within her. And so in 1 Samuel 1:5, it says, unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. That's that bottom word, room. And if you'll notice, womb and compassion, the root word is the same. So the Hebrew word for womb is connected to the words for mercy and compassion. And the mother is the person of compassion. She always has compassion on her children because they come from her womb. With that in mind, get a load of this. We're going to look at, I went the wrong way. Okay, here we go. That is the letter mem, and the word mem, because it has two M's, and the mem refers to water, right? Now, here is something that the sages have always said, and this I'm talking about is like 1,000 years before Messiah even came. This is what they said. That the open mem referred to an open womb, and a closed mem meant the lady was barren. Okay? And what's in the womb? Water. Okay? And so here you have an open mem and a closed mem. Someone who can give birth and someone who can't give birth. Just like Hannah, she couldn't give birth. Miriam, she's someone, who could give birth, but her womb was closed when Messiah came. All right, remember Sarah, she was barren. All the famous matriarchs are barren at first. Do you mind if I go a few extra minutes? Let me share a New Testament story that nobody understands because they don't know the culture. Do you remember the Samaritan woman at the well who had 5 husbands? And the one she was with wasn't even her husband? What kind of a woman was she? Everyone sees her as, some wicked woman. That is the furthest from the truth. She's one of the most holiest, righteous women in the entire New Testament. How many of you know women don't have any rights in the Middle East? How about 2,000 years ago? Could a woman get a job? If they learned to read today, they'd get stoned. They couldn't have a job back then. Could a woman get a divorce, or was she stuck? Stuck. So the fact that she had 5 husbands, now it's one thing to be single and a prostitute, it's another thing to be married committing adultery. If she had 5 husbands and was committing adultery, she'd have been stoned by now. So that couldn't be the case. So why did all these men, the whole story is about rejection. That's why the first thing she says to Yeshua is, you Jews reject us. Where are they at? They're at Jacob's well, where Joseph is buried. And the very place is a place of rejection, just like Joseph was rejected by his family. Every time she's there, she's reminded how rejected she is. And the first words is how rejected, Messiah was rejected. So he can relate to this woman. And so he asked for a glass of water, and she goes, you don't even have anything to drink out of. Wow. Here this Jew not only will talk to me, he'll drink out of my cup, and I'm a Gentile, and I could be unclean. And God is just breaking down. She was breaking down every barrier. And when he said, I'll give you water, you'll never thirst again, she says, give me that. I don't ever want to come back to this stinking place again, because every time I'm here, I'm reminded how rejected I am. So what is the rejection? She can't get pregnant. This is why the 5 men have dumped her, because it's all about the air. It's all about the land. This is why the women reject her. She doesn't want to be like Hannah and Sarah and all this, God doesn't love you. You know, what's wrong with you? You're barren. And so what does Yeshua do? He gives her, remember, she's not a bad woman. She worships God. She says, we worship God on this mountain, and I know the Messiah is coming, and he's going to tell us all things. Her doctrine's a little screwed up, but tell me whose church this isn't. And so here she loves God. She's looking for the Messiah. So what does Yeshua do? He gives her the honor of have it forever being recorded in his word that it was a Gentile woman who was the first one to take the gospel to the nations. I mean, that's mind-blowing. And when he says, look, the fields are white unto harvest, who's coming? The Samaritans. And they all wear white. He wasn't pointing at the field, he was pointing at the Samaritans who are about to be harvested into the kingdom. So that's just another way of looking at this. Okay. Now, along this mind, anyone know that word? You know Aleph, M. Mother. That's what it means. It means mother. Okay? I'm just showing you different words with mem to catch your mind. Okay. Genesis 3:20. Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the M, the mother of all living. And so the picture language tells us that the mother is the strong water or the life giver. Just like water gives life. Without water, you don't live very long. Now let's look at Ruth chapter 1, verse 11. Naomi says, turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Now, mem, if you remember, has a numerical value of 40. And it so happens in the development of an embryo, the human form is established after 40 days. Now, I'm going to take you somewhere, and this is kind of interesting because I have a good relationship with Orthodox rabbis. I don't try to convert them. I can't convert anybody. God will reveal himself to them, just like with Joseph. His brothers didn't recognize Joseph either. But I literally had an Orthodox rabbi from Israel come to my house and spent 3 days at my house. Okay? And we'd go on walks and talks, and I'll never forget at breakfast. I don't hide the Messiah. He knows what I think. I know what he thinks, and we just converse. So we're at breakfast, and he says, he doesn't know everything I believe, but, we're kind of on the same page. We have a lot in common. He says, man, I can't believe these Christians believe in a virgin birth. And I go, yeah? Well, hey, let me show you something in the Hebrew. Now, let's look at this. I love witnessing from their own scriptures. I don't use the New Testament. I don't need the New Testament. How many of you know Yeshua did not have a Gideon Bible? Okay? And it says, search the scriptures, they speak of me. And everyone, all the believers in all the book of Acts never had a Gideon Bible either. It's all in the Tanakh, and we need to understand it from the Tanakh. And so that's what I do when I'm with the Jews. I just show them their own scriptures and let God work as he wants. So here's what happened. Look at Isaiah 7, verse 1. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will conceive and bear a son, and his name will be called God with us. Now, here is the problem. And here's what the Jewish people tell the Christians, and the Christians go, oh, what am I supposed to do now? The Hebrew word there is alma, but there's another word for virgin called betula. Alma can mean a young girl. Betula is supposed to mean a virgin, literal virgin, but Alma can be a young girl. And they say in this verse it says Alma, it doesn't say virgin. It's a young girl is how it should be translated. So now what are you going to do with that? And that's what this rabbi told me. And I go, Shazam. I said, let's go to Genesis 24, verse 43. Here we have Rebecca when she's going to be meeting her hubby, and she is a literal virgin. And it says, behold, I stand by the well of water, and it'll come to pass that when the virgin comes to drink water, but guess what? The word for virgin there is Alma. Okay, give me, I pray thee, a little water of thy pitcher. Okay, now look at this. A betula, on the other end, betula doesn't always refer only to literal virgins, but could also mean a young woman. And so what I'm showing him here is two verses where Alma can be virgin or young girl, and betula can be virgin or young girl. Because look at this. In Joel 1:8, lament like a virgin, okay, and it's the word there is betula, girded with sackcloth for the husband of her youth. So here's a betula that's been married. So how can you have a betula who's been married and Rebecca, who we know was a virgin, be an Alma? So both words can go both ways. So this is important, and they have to admit, yeah, okay, it doesn't always mean virgin, and it doesn't always mean young girl. It can be either one. But that doesn't solve the problem. That just means, depends on how you want to interpret it. So, guess what? Interestingly enough, when the Septuagint, how many of you know about the Septuagint? It was written like a couple hundred years before Messiah was even born. So let's look at what the Jewish scribes thought back then. When the Septuagint was written by the 72 elders of Israel, there were 6 from each tribe. The writers specifically chose the Greek word parthenos for that verse, which only means virgin. So the fact that 72 Jews read that verse and they said it was a definite virgin, not a young girl. So their own translators, and they loved the Septuagint translation because there was no discrepancy between any of them. And I say, well, then how come 200 years before they chose a Greek word that meant definite virgin? Okay, so now he's starting to suck a little air. And then I said there's no doubt that the Jewish leaders looked at this passage as a messianic passage with the expectation there would be some type of a supernatural birth because they put definite virgin. Etymologically, the meaning of the word Alma is derived from the verb meaning to hide or to be concealed as a womb conceals a child. Other aspects of the Alma's hiddenness is that the term Alma is never applied to a married woman. Okay, now, let's go and look at Isaiah 9, 6, and 7. It says, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. And then it says, of the increase of his government and peace there'll be no end upon the throne of David, upon his kingdom, to order it, establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forever. Okay, so you see, the verse that says, of the increase, that is the bottom word, le marbe. Okay? But there's a problem. When they discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls before Messiah was born and they saw the original Hebrew, the letter mem is closed and it's not at the end. They knew it would be a virgin birth. Nowhere in the Bible is a closed mem at the beginning of a word, but here it is. And you've got the Septuagint, you can look at the scroll and you can see. And so that tells you they definitely knew it was going to be a virgin birth. Isn't that crazy? Okay, we're going to have to hurry here. So, anyone know this word? Do you see the mem at the beginning and the mem at the end? Miriam. That is the word for Miriam. There she is. The interesting thing about, let me see. Where am I? Okay, I'm coming up to it. Okay, I think it's interesting about Miriam. She has both mems, an open womb and a closed womb. She had a closed womb before the Messiah, and then an open womb and had many other kids. But it's interesting that Miriam, or Mary, was chosen to be the mother of the Messiah, and she has both an open and a closed mem in her name. And we know mem refers to water. Can you live without water? I mean, how about fresh fish? Can they live without water, fresh water? And guess what? You can't live without Torah. The water is Torah. You go more than 3 days without Torah, you're going to be dying inside. Think about it. The water, we always equate water with life. When you equate water as the word, if you're not in the water, you're going to spiritually die. You got to mikvah, immerse yourself in it. Look at this word, one of the names for God. This is actually one of his names, and it has an open and a closed mem, and it is Makom. It means the place. If someone says the place, everyone knows that's Jerusalem. And you'll see the open mem, and you'll see the closed mem there. That's because God's name or his place is a place of both revelation and closed revelation. It refers to the mystery of God's omnipresence, omniscience. The open mem is how we perceive God through what we can see through creation and the wonders of the universe, which is full of his glory. In Psalms 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament shows his handiwork. Well, the world is contained in him, but doesn't contain him. Yet in the final analysis, his place remains unknowable and hidden. Proverbs 15:3, the eyes of the Lord are where? Beholding the evil and the good. Isaiah 66:1, thus says the Lord, the heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. Where is the house that you build for me? And where is what? The place. The place. Psalm 33:14, from the place of his habitation, he looks upon all the inhabitants of the earth. He's got pretty good eyes. Isaiah 57:15, it says, thus says the high and lofty one that inhabits all of eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy place. But it goes on to say, if you're humble, you can dwell with him. Genesis 32:30, Jacob called the name of what? The place. Makom, Peniel, for I've seen God face to face and my life is preserved. That word is also used in Leviticus 6:16. The remainder thereof shall Aaron and his sons eat with unleavened bread. It shall be eaten in the holy place. So where is the place of God's kingdom? Where does he rule? Well, let's look at Psalm 145. We'll close with this verse. Let me see where we're at. Okay, almost with this verse. All your works shall praise you, O Lord, and your saints shall bless you. They'll speak of the glory of your kingdom and talk of your power to make known to the sons of men your mighty acts and the glorious majesty of your kingdom. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures throughout all generations. Do you know both words for kingdom and dominion all begin with the letter mem? All right, here. You have Malkut, okay. See, and that the mem, that is there. And how about Mashiach, Mashiach, Mashiach? That is Messiah, and it begins with the letter mem. As a matter of fact, Oh, that other word was mem shalah, in case you're wondering. Okay, you can take your picture, but here is mems. You have Messiah, known as Mashiach, and there it is in the Hebrew. Unleavened bread is matzah, the lampstand or the menorah. That's how you spell menorah. Appointed times, the moed, Moses or Moshe. So the mem is a very important word, revealing things to us if we want to be watching. Amen?